Counting careless in the sky. What a thrilling time to be alive.
What is up, everybody? It's the Georgia Show, Thursday morning edition. You got two jabronis here because Jake Rowe. It's always a couple of jabronis on this show, but
they just let us out of the cage, man. We do get to be on this YouTube channel sometimes.
Yeah, every once in a while you get to see our faces. I'm Palmer Toms, that's Jake Roos, and this is the Georgia Show. We are DawgsHQ, and today we are talking NFL Combine. Today is the first day of on-field workouts. Interviews started yesterday. Jake Rowe is up there and will have us covered all week long with the 11 Georgia players that are in attendance. That number leads the SEC. An interesting group. I mean, tonight we've got defensive linemen and linebackers working out. Only one Georgia player represented there. That would be Zion Logue. And I've got a piece up that went up yesterday about the fact that there's not a ton of that there's no representation of Georgia linebackers, but that is not at all a representation of what Georgia linebackers are. That group is still plenty fine, and that there's tons of potential there. The lack of them at the combine shows the potential that there is in 2024. From there, those guys interviewed yesterday. From there, we'll see interviews today for defensive backs and tight ends. That is a heavy group for Georgia with 4 guys there, 3 DBs, and of course, Brock Bowers. Those guys will work out tomorrow, and then Saturday and Sunday, you get offensive linemen on Sunday to round things out with the quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. That is the signature day of the Combine, Saturday, starting at 1 p.m. at Lucas Oil Stadium. Jake, I guess, let's just talk Combine first. What's your biggest thing that you're looking for to see out of the Georgia crew that's up there?
I think that some of these guys have a chance to make some headway for themselves, and that's always what's exciting about the Combine, in my opinion, is just the opportunity for guys to go show out, kind of make themselves a little bit more well-known and, kind of further their stock. I'm interested to see how a guy like Tyke Smith does in the Combine setting. Not a guy that we would necessarily maybe expect to test the best, but, how does he do? Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, another guy who I think can really help and possibly hurt his stock, depending on how things go. And, Zion Logue, definitely a guy that I'll be watching to make some headway too. Probably, I would say, of the guys in Georgia's group, maybe the least discussed is Zion Logue. So, a guy who has a chance to really step things up and prove to people why he got this invite, why he was such a key part of the Bulldogs. And, that's what it's all about, in my opinion. How guys like Brock Bowers are going to do. It doesn't matter. Brock Bowers could come out, fall down on both of his 40 attempts, but it doesn't matter. If you don't take Brock Bowers in the first round, you're going to be looking foolish later on. So Kamari Lassiter, I think, is one of those guys pretty well established. I don't think that he's necessarily going to lose much from this. I think that, he could gain a little bit for sure if he runs well. But, overall, I think that, Georgia, once again, just kind of reinforcing that idea of development and the fact that so many of these guys are there. So many teams want to see them in person, have a chance to see them go through these drills. It speaks to what Georgia does, what Georgia has built. And I think that that's what's all important when you're looking at the Combine. It's another chance for Georgia to put its name out there on a national stage and show that not only do they get these guys to this level, but they get them super prepared for it as well.
And it feels like every year, we've been covering this the last couple of years at DawgsHQ. That every year there's been somebody that Georgia has kind of stolen the Combine the last 2 years. And I mean, obviously that shows in the draft numbers as well, with UGA leading the way over the last 2 years. Obviously, that 2022 draft, 15 players were picked. That's a modern record from a single school. Last year, there were 10 guys picked. I want to say that they were tied with Alabama there. Maybe TCU or Michigan. One of those programs that was a really competitive team back in 2022. Georgia had 10 guys picked in 2023, though. Then we're looking at 11 that get invited. UGA continuing to show out at the draft, at the combine. It's certainly an opportunity to continue. It can just as much be about the program as it is about the player, because I think that, I remember last year, Nolan Smith and the way that he just absolutely dominated that first night and then, steps onto the NFL Network set and gives a recruiting pitch for Georgia and is like, look, come to Georgia because they prepare you for this. We've been training to do this and that. And, as much as they are college football players, Georgia prepares them to be professional football players as well. You mentioned a couple of the names that I'd want to highlight here. Jake did a piece about the guys that he's looking forward to seeing the most. Jake Rowe, that would be. I did a piece about the 5 guys that I thought had the most to gain. And you're absolutely right there on Kamari Lassiter. He's a guy that I'm looking at to be a potential riser. You look at some mock drafts, and we've got a roundup for you over on DawgsHQ, a recent roundup of those mock drafts. Fringe first round guy. And as you look at the cornerback class, there's probably 6-7 guys that could go in the first round. After that, I think there's a drop off, and Kamari is certainly in that upper echelon of corners. Does he secure himself a first round spot? That is a big, how does he compare testing wise to those other guys? And obviously a lot of it is going to have to do with how does he fit into the specific schemes of the teams that are picking. But I think that Kamari Lassiter, an underrated and undervalued guy, when you look at the list of top corners in college football this past year, PFF and this and that. And it's just like, where's Kamari Lassiter? Because that guy just did not give up big plays, didn't give up touchdowns. His numbers were fantastic. Georgia, not necessarily a team that puts a corner on a specific player, but when we saw Kamari playing against those top receivers, and there were a lot of them, he did really well, and then the one time that they did decide to kind of make him a shadow guy for a specific player, they changed up his position a little bit and put him in the slot and had him play star matched up with Luther Burden against Missouri. That, was a huge factor in that game. So Kamari is one that certainly intrigues me on the on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side, the one, and before I shift away completely, I think that you're absolutely right on Tyke Smith, somebody that may not be looked at as the best tester. And it was interesting listening to Matt Miller talk about Georgia defensive backs. And he, said that they're really hard to evaluate because of how well that they've been coached. And you've got to wonder if they've just maxed out their skill set. And Tyke would be, he didn't say Tyke specifically, but it felt like he was talking about Tyke because, maybe not necessarily looked at as highly in the draft as a Lassiter or a Javon Bullard. But
and that's, to me, that's where testing numbers can really benefit a guy like Tyke.
Absolutely.
Let's say he's maxed out his potential, right, in terms of what he's able to do on the field. That's still a lot. He was still a great contributor for Georgia. He was very hard-nosed, very reliable, a guy who has been there. He's done it. I think that he's a guy that you boost that stock with some good numbers, and you can really elevate yourself.
Absolutely.
Kamari Lassiter, to me, look, turn the tape on. You got to trust your eyes when you're talking about Kamari Lassiter. He can, I think, wow people and probably cause people to dive in further on his tape, depending on what he does up in Indianapolis.
Yes.
But somebody is going to get a hell of a cornerback with Kamari Lassiter regardless.
And there's levels to this. Ty Key is we're talking about, this guy is securing himself a draft pick, maybe a 4th round pick instead of a 6th round pick or whatever. But because he, is a proven player, I don't think that we're talking about Tyke Smith making a jump into day 2. Now with Kamari Lassiter, I'd be shocked if he made it out of the 2nd round, out of the top 50 probably.
Yeah.
And so, when I say that there's levels to this, his most to gain isn't necessarily like, hey, is he going to get picked? Where is he going to go? It's how high can he get picked? How much money can he make in testing well and comparing to those other top corners. But both those guys, both those defensive backs, and for different reasons, intriguing. Where I was going with this on the offensive side of the ball, I look at Georgia's offensive linemen that are going to be there, Amarius Mims and Cedric Van Pran, as probably the two that I think that have the most to gain. You could make a case for the receivers, Marcus being kind of in that same category as Tyke, of somebody that's proven his production, but may not be, thought of as a day 2 type guy. Ladd being in that same tier as Kamari, where it's like, hey, can he make that jump into day 1? But with the offensive linemen, Mims and Van Pran, Mims, we're talking about somebody that only has 8 career starts under his belt. And that's going to be a big question. Teams are going to wonder, hey, you don't have that much experience. Why should we take a gamble on you, when we could go with this other guy that has a little bit more experience?
I think what he's going to do in these testing is exactly what's going to compel them to
freakish on-field testing. Yep. Just freakish ability. And I mean, that's what convinces a team that it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's played in 8 games or 38 games, and so, I think that we're talking about, one of the most talented, physically gifted guys that had some bad injury luck this past season and was behind a, really good offensive lineman, NFL draft guys, his first 2 years on campus. I mean, you look at the tackles that Georgia has put out and they've been productive. I mean, Jamari Salyer goes and starts as a rookie with the Chargers. The other tackle on that team, the other 2 tackles that Salyer played with on that 2021 national championship team, Broderick Jones, 1st round pick, and Warren McClendon, who went on and played and was a contributor for the Rams this year. So that's the kind of people that Amarius Mims was behind. It's not that he's not a good player. He was a 5-star for a reason. He's going to test freakishly, especially if that ankle is completely healed. Obviously re-injured it a little bit. I actually think he injured the opposite ankle. He had surgery on one of the ankles, that caused him to miss some time in season. And then he re-injured, got hurt again in the SEC championship game. If you can test well, as an offensive lineman and just, blow people away, that inexperience isn't going to matter.
Well, and I think too, it's interesting that you point that out, because the idea of testing doesn't matter. We talked about several guys that it does matter for, and I think that speaks a lot to Georgia's recruiting. I think that both angles of this, right? We're talking about guys who have potentially maxed out their potential, but have been very solid players. We're talking about guys who also maybe haven't even scratched the surface of their potential because they were behind some great players. So it's really kind of both plays for Georgia. They know how to find the guys. They know how to develop the guys. And in some cases, they know how to maximize their guys. And I think that all 3 of those things are what keep NFL teams coming back to what the Georgia Bulldogs do in terms of their talent, what they're able to develop, and the guys that they're able to put into the league. Now, I think the other thing that you're not going to see necessarily from the testing portion of this, obviously the interview portion to some degree, will be, how they prepare, how they speak to the media, how they speak in front of these teams. But the legacy Georgia has created over the last few years in terms of what those guys have been able to go in and do, and the kind of men that they've put out in terms of NFL rosters, I think is another aspect to this that keeps these guys coming back. It's not necessarily all about how fast you can run. They want good stewards of the community. They want people who can get out there and be involved, speak on behalf of the team, be good representatives. Georgia has proven kind of time and time again that it has those guys. It trains them not only on the field, but off the field as well. And it's something that you hear consistently in this setting, but also on the recruiting front as well. Kids are talking about that, pretty consistently too.
And having been there last year for that Nolan Smith interview, that's exactly what it was. It was NFL people coming up to me being like, hey, you were in that Georgia group. You covered Georgia. Is this guy always like this? Is he always this impressive?
Well, here's the thing. Nolan Smith to me, total outlier, right? Because there was no training necessary for Nolan Smith. He's just been that dude his whole life.
Yeah, he has. But I mean, somebody else that I think is going to blow people away and really impress people is Cedric Van Pran.
I agree.
mean, and I brought him up as somebody that I think intrigues me on the field because he's an incredibly talented interior offensive lineman. Center is probably a lesser valued position in the draft than obviously tackle. But we were talking about Cedric coming into the season as one of the top centers in the country. We were talking about Cedric as a guy that turned down the NFL and was going to be one of the top taken centers last year to come back to Georgia, for some unfinished business, to better himself. And yeah, it didn't turn out the way that he wanted it to, but he continued to improve. He continued to impress. And I think that while he's slipped behind a couple of guys, the Oregon center, Jackson Powers Johnson, I want to say his name. There's a Duke guy. I want to say his name is Graham Barton.
You're just making names up right now.
No. These just as easily could have been my classmates in high school as they are.
These are frat brothers of Palmer Tom. So just so you're aware.
When you sit in on Daniel Jeremiah and Matt Miller, talking about these guys for hours and hours and hours, you pick up on it a little bit. But
sure.
Nonetheless, we were talking about Cedric as one of the top centers. He's maybe slipped into that second or third center. I think that he's got an opportunity with the interviews and with a impressive on-field workout. He decided not to go and participate in the Senior Bowl after having accepted that invite. Why is that? Is there some injury concern? That's something that'll come out, with all the medicals that these guys do. But I think that overall, Cedric is somebody that is going to A, impress on the field, and B, impress as a representative for Georgia.
Don't overthink it. That's my thing with Cedric Van Pran. You thought he was the number one center last year. I don't think he did much to hurt himself this year, and he's going to nail the interviews. He's going to be that guy, right? Center, like you said, a potentially devalued position comparative to other. It's not a left tackle. Okay, so I understand that. But this is a guy that if you thought he was that guy last year, not much has changed. He was that guy, and he's been that guy. That's the thing. You want to talk about the limiting experience of Amarius Mims, 8 starts. How does that affect it? Cedric Van Pran, tons of experience under his belt. A guy that has been a stalwart for this line. And I think
44 consecutive starts, I think, because 15 and 21, 15 and 22, and 14 this past year, if my math is correct.
He knows how to win, and he knows how to get the ball to the quarterback, and he knows how to represent it the right way. So.
And that's going to be something to watch for Georgia this year, because I think that fans definitely, took that a little bit for granted of Cedric's just going to get it there. And, he had maybe 2 fumbled snaps over the course of his career and recovered one of them and picked up a first down with it. That was a great play there. Every offensive lineman's dream.
And the thing about it is, again, you go back to the recruiting aspect, and I'm always going to turn it back there because that's what I focus on, but came from a great program in high school. This kid has been taught right the whole way, man. He has really been under some fantastic instruction, played down there at Warren Easton in New Orleans, one of the top programs in the state of Louisiana, year in and year out. So he's a guy who has had excellent preparation throughout his football career. And I think, like I said, don't overthink Cedric Van Pran. If you're looking for a center, he's the guy I tend to lean on. Admittedly, I don't watch a lot of Oregon or Duke football. Those don't come across very often. I'm pretty well locked into Georgia football, but the guy has been tremendous. He's done it in big situations consistently. And, I think that to me, it's a no brainer. If you're looking for that guy for your team, I think he's got to be that guy.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So we've talked offensive linemen. We've talked defensive backs. Let's get into, we mentioned Zion Logan and the defensive linemen. That covers the defensive side of the ball for Georgia and the offensive line of scrimmage. Let's talk the skill players. Let's talk the guys that get the ball in their hands. They've got 5 of them there, 2 running backs, Daijun Edwards, Kendall Milton, 2 receivers, Ladd McConkey, Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint, and, of course, the tight end Brock Bowers. No quarterback at the Combine this year, and that's a good thing for Georgia. It's a good thing that they've got Carson Beck coming back, and that he's not, taking that leap. That'll be welcomed. But of those 5 guys that are playing with the ball in their hands, who is it that you think can make the biggest impression at the Combine this week?
That's tough. I mean, I think that obviously you when you're talking about biggest, like a jump to the first would be huge for Ladd. There's no doubt about that. I think that, Rose.
What are you watching for then? Let's narrow it down.
Okay, so what I'm watching for, the guy I'm probably watching the closest is going to be Kendall Milton. To be honest,
that's where I would
because of what we saw from him down the stretch, man. We finally got healthy Kendall Milton, and he was excellent, right? Not a lot of tread on the tires for the guy. The NFL teams are going to know that. He's not been used as heavily because of those injuries along the way. But when he's been out there, he's been super effective. He's got a big frame, so he can be that big bruiser for you in the backfield, but he's also got that ability to make a guy miss. He's got the acceleration. I'm interested to see how he runs, and I think that that's what it'll come down to for him. I think if he's able to put together a good 40 time, and really that's the case for both of these backs. If Daijun Edwards comes out there and really lights up the 40, people's radars are going to suddenly be going up because he has been so shifty throughout his career, a guy that you could lean on when you needed those 4 yards just all the time, man. So I think that the 2 backs to me are the ones that I'll be watching closest because I don't know that we know how they're going to do in that setting as well. I feel like I have a good idea of how Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint is going to perform. I think that his 40 number will probably not blow people away. I think it'll be solid, but I don't know that it's going to just be earth shattering. He's not going to come out here and Chris Conley this thing. He'll kill the gauntlet because he's got those big sticky Mickey Mouse hands. And, he'll get through all the passing drills, I think, with ease. So, I think that he could boost it a bit. I just don't know that I think that it's probably headed that way. I do think, though, Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint, and I've said this since he was in high school, that guy is going to have a long career, I think, in the league because I think he does everything, and I think he does everything well. He's maybe not the best at anything, but he is a jack of all trades kind of guy, keeps his nose down, gets in there and works. I think that he's the kind of guy that NFL teams are looking for as a value pick in those second and third days, a guy that can be kind of a maybe under talked about cornerstone of your franchise.
Well, I mean, he was a top 100 player in the country coming out of high school, sure. And you mentioned, a successful program that Cedric came out of. There's not many more successful programs in the country than St. Thomas Aquinas,
sure,
down in South Florida there. So,
but the knocks against Marcus are the same now as they were then, which is that he's not a burner. You knew that going in. He was going to be a bigger bodied guy. What is he, 6'2"-ish, I think is probably where he's going to check in.
Right. He's listed at 6'2", 195.
Yeah. And so I think that he's going to be a little bit bigger guy. But like I said, to me, the hands, the makeup mentally, those are the 2 things that are going to propel him forward.
Yeah, no doubt. What do you think Ladd's going to run? That might be because I completely agree with you on Kendall and Daijun. I think that those 2 guys can impress. Again, going back to the recruiting rankings of these guys, Kendall was one of those highly touted players coming out of high school, and it's something that these NFL scouts and evaluators take notice of. They know, it's a lot of the same evaluation that you're doing. Obviously you turn on the tape. The draft process is very similar to the recruiting process in that way, where it's you turn on the tape and you take the tape for what it's worth. But you've also got to evaluate and weigh, how much weight do you put into the tape? How much weight do you put into the traits? And,
Sure.
How fast is this guy? How big is this guy? Whatever. Kendall is one of those guys that has good tape, especially late in his career. He's going to have knocks because he wasn't necessarily out there, and those medicals might hurt him. But the traits are there. And so, that's somebody that I think probably gets a day 3 pick. Running back is pretty tough to project because those guys are just so expendable in the NFL now. Teams would rather. I feel like you see a lot of really good college running backs going in day 3, and it's like, how did XYZ get to the 6th round? And it's because these teams know, hey, we don't need to take a running back on day 1 or day 2. We can get a really good one and pay a lot less for it. There's a lot less stock that they're putting into it when they're taking them late. And so wouldn't shock me if both those guys went. My prediction would be that Kendall goes and Dejan doesn't. But again, going back to those draft calls with Matt Miller, he's got Edwards higher than he does Milton. And he said, quote, Edwards is a player I want to revisit post-combine and review his Senior Bowl week. That says, he's got an eye on him, and there's something there. The goal line ability, the start-stop ability, and then proving himself and showing that he's got some pass-catching traits as well. There's a lot to like with both those guys. But I think that when we're talking about these 5, Ladd's 40 time is the biggest, and I guess Brock's time as well. For
I don't think it matters. I think that because Brock's football speed is.
No, I do agree with you. I do agree.
No, I'm not saying he can come out and lay an egg.
It doesn't matter, but it's intriguing because of how big he is and all that. But I mean, there's no doubt he's the top tight end, and so I think that.
Yeah, you don't want him coming out and laying an egg with a 5 flat. I mean, that would be shocking, of course. But that was a very long-winded way to ask me what I think Ladd's 40 times going to be. Everything I do is long-winded. I think Ladd's going to be in that 4.4 range somewhere. Personally, I think that he has those kind of quicks. I think he could potentially dip down into 4.3. I think that he has that kind of speed in there. And with the training, with the focus, he could get there. And if he gets there, now we're talking about a very, very intriguing conversation because a lot of it's going to come down to medicals, I think, with him as well. Again, like Bowers, I think that the tape says what it says about him. He's a great player, and he consistently was. But he dealt with those injury situations, and, he's a smaller guy. And so, that's going to be on the mind of NFL teams, and rightfully so.
Is Ladd in a better or worse draft spot, in a better or worse position going into this draft than he would have been had he come out last year?
I think he's probably in a worse spot. Personally. Yeah. I do because of the injuries that he sustained this year. I think that's probably a knock on him. Now, he probably. So I mean,
then we're talking about him being if he's in a worse spot right now, we're talking about him being a potential 1st-round pick. If last year he would have been in a better spot, are we talking about him being a surefire 1st-round pick? Or is that
here's the thing.
Hey, fringeness of it, he could be what he was pre-2023.
My thought is all things the same. Let's assume that he were to test the same last year.
Right.
Test the same this year. I think that the injury concern is probably more prevalent this go round than it was last year.
That's fair.
And so I
Because
think
you just add another one to the list. It's
exactly.
you can do the head, shoulders, knees, and toes, type thing with him. He's got a back, he's got an ankle, he's had a knee. The back wasn't an issue before 2023. And the ankle is a bigger issue now. Now, I don't know how much a sprained ankle is a big issue. When you talk about draft and combine, that's something that these guys get over. It's a pain in the what to deal with in season.
The concern, I think, becomes: is it recurrent? Is this something we're going to be dealing with at the next level? Oh, is he a guy who is susceptible to this? And if it's not an ankle, is it a shoulder? Is it a back? Is it to me, once you start stockpiling those things, then that's how you end up with that injury-prone label. And I'm not saying that about Ladd. He's tough. He's played through a lot more of that than people probably realize as well. But I think that, all testing numbers the same. The less question marks you can have around yourself, the better. My hope is that teams are not blown away with Ladd and he slides to the Atlanta Falcons in the second round, and we all walk away happy and thrilled about what we have.
Hey, the Tennessee Titans fan over here is hoping the exact same thing. Wouldn't mind AD Mitchell there either. So
no doubt. AD would be great, man. And like I said, to me, Marcus is one of those guys that, like I said, not going to kill you with the numbers, but I think is going to do well, and I think do well at the next level. So, what's your over under? Let me ask you this: going into this week, before we even know any of these numbers, what's your over?
How many guys get picked?
Mm-hmm. I'll set it for you. Let's set that number at 8.5.
I think I'd go over there. I mean,
okay. What if I said 9.5?
I think I'd go under. I think 9 is probably where I'm falling.
That's kind of where I'm at. To me, the guys
8.5 feels low because you've got 11 guys here, and just talking about it. Brock is going, Ladd is going, Kamari's going, Bullard. I think that Tyke Smith goes. Marcus. Yes.
Amarius.
Cedric and Amarius. Yep. So that right there, that's 8. Your fringe guys are the 2 running backs, Kendall and Dejan, and one of those guys would get you to 9. Now, if you consider Tyke Smith maybe a fringe guy, which I think he would have been last year, that 8.5 number, that's where the under comes in. The under comes in with Tyke, the 2 running backs, and Logue obviously not getting picked.
Yeah, see, I think 8.5 is.
I think 8.5 is the right number to set it at.
I agree.
I think because 8 is in play, but I think that
one of the running backs, one of
those guys, and I think that Tyke Smith will get picked. But Georgia's been in double digits the last 2 years for sure. I don't know that they're getting there.
Do you think there's a chance all 11 go?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't see a world in which all 11 go. But I think that there's a chance that we could get to 10.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And
that's where I feel safe with that 9 number. I don't know. I would say, like I said, over on 8.5. I feel good that they're going to get 9. 10 is where, can they get there? Would be impressive. 11, I don't see it, but that would speak volumes about, that Georgia G and what the NFL thinks about players from Georgia. Taking a chance on a guy like a Zion Logue that may not necessarily be an NFL type player, but hey, he played at Georgia, and so maybe he is. That's what that would say to me. But 8 is not off the table, and that would be a it's not a doomsday scenario, but that would take guys that we're expecting to get picked not getting picked.
Sure. Nah, it's pretty damn good.
Which, the NFL draft surprises us every year. I did not have Nakobe Dean going in the third round. I didn't have Justin Schaefer going before Jamari Salyer. I didn't have Keely Ringo falling to day 3.
No, I agree.
So there's a lot of time left before that, but that will do it for our time here. We will be back with you on Sunday to wrap up the combine recap. Jake Rowe will be back with us. And we hope he's back with us if he survives cold Indy on his own.
I think he has to survive Espelon Reposado as the
you said it. But cold Indianapolis, the city made for gerbils. We've got Jake up there, so be sure to tune back in. Keep an eye on this YouTube channel for all the combine coverage from there. Join us Sunday night as we are recapping the combine, and then Bark After Dark is back next week. Right?
Yeah, exciting. We're locking in our guest. We think we know who it's going to be, but we don't want to announce it just yet. We want to do some double checking, but we will be back one way or the other. If we don't have a guest, it may just be me and Roe kind of getting together and
you've always got the Palmer Toms episode in your back pocket.
We do. We've always got the Palmer Toms episode. So,
but that'll do it for us on today's episode of the Georgia Show. I am Palmer Toms. That is Jake Caruso, and we are Dogs HQ. Thanks, y'all.